Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Is the meltdown getting worse? Donald Trump now encouraging China to investigate Joe Biden. We're going to get into all of this right now. So far, Trump sticking in a one-man war room, providing almost no guidance for surrogates or a consistent message, minimal coordination with legal advisors. The idea that Trump alone can fix it is on display in a pair of rambling appearances.
The conversation was perfect. He couldn't carry his blank strap. I won't say it because they'll say it was so terrible to say. But that guy couldn't carry his blank strap. Perfect? I mean, perfect. Conversation. Just so you know, the call was perfect. Nancy Pelosi hands out subpoenas like, she has to approve it. She hands out subpoenas like they're cookies. You want a subpoena? Here you go, take them like they're cookies.
You know what it is? State of Mind, our recurring series with CEO of the Energy Project, Tony Schwartz, the author of The Way We Are Working Isn't Working, and co-author of The Art of the Deal. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your opinion, which some people would call your bias. You have been waiting for this. You have been waiting to see Donald Trump on the run. Is he more on the run right now in this Ukraine scandal than any time we've seen him since he became president?
Well, I think the objective evidence is obvious that he is. I think what's really interesting is to observe a level of falling apart, that melting down, that is so far beyond what we've seen. And in his press conference yesterday, to watch him, especially in that moment where he was going back and forth with the Reuters reporter, and see that he actually moved from fight, which is his normal physiological place, to what I would call freeze, which is an extreme version of fight, where he literally was paralyzed and finally said, ask that guy a question, ask him a question.
That is fascinating, and you've worked with him, and you know him, you've studied him. What you're saying, I think, is so revealing in that moment. There's a whole debate in this country of, do you even interview the president anymore and some of his enablers and people who've admitted to lying? And yet I want to give a shout out. We do so much criticism in the media. Shout out to Reuters' Jeff Mason, who in that very exchange you talk about, he didn't lose his cool. He didn't get drawn into it. As you say, he held the line, which led to a moment of what you're calling the freeze. Let's take a look.
The question, sir, was what did you want President Zelensky to do about Vice President Biden and his son Hunter?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up of what I just asked you, sir.
Listen, you ready? We have the president of Finland. Ask him a question. I've given you a long answer. Ask this gentleman a question. Don't be rude.
No, sir, I don't want to be rude. I just wanted you to have a chance to answer the question that I asked you.
I've answered everything. It's a whole hoax. And you know who's playing into the hoax? People like you.
I mean, that's an amazing moment. There's a piece out today called Unfit for Office. It's like a 10,000-word piece by George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's husband, about why Trump is unfit for office. It is, first of all, quite extraordinary. It's like a prosecution of Trump, but particularly around this idea that he's a fiduciary, that he has a responsibility to represent the country in this case, and he is putting his personal interest ahead of it. And that is in violent opposition to what the Constitution laid out. He also talks about the components of pathological narcissism. That's a psychological that diagnosis. But his point is that it doesn't take a psychiatrist to recognize, as you just saw in that piece, that this is a man who is way, way out there. He's way off in the blue yonder. And to watch this is frightening, particularly because, Ari, it's going to get way worse. Because what's happened to him is, when you talk about narcissism, you're basically talking about a guy who is constantly trying to fill himself. I heard Peter talk about the idea of a black hole. Well, the black hole is really at base about his own sense of himself. There's an emptiness and there's a terror that's setting in that he's going to lose the legitimacy that the presidency gave him.
That's the other thing I was going to ask you. I've been wondering about this. I don't know the answer. What does it mean to you that the Mueller probe, which he triggered with his own brash firing of the FBI director, comes to its final denouement with Mueller's testimony, and the next day he does this? I mean, is that almost a political death wish?
I think Donald Trump is undeniably his own worst enemy. And I think that we see it play out all over and over again. And psychiatrists talk about the notion that when you are defensive, that the inevitable outcome of the defense is to pull upon yourself precisely what you were meant to be defending against. So he goes and doubles down on the very illegal act that he's done because he's in such a state of defensiveness and lack of good cognition that all he can do is attack. And that is evidence of what he does to himself every day. Every day. And that will get worse. It'll get worse for him, and it'll get worse for us. We are a long way from over in watching this unfold.
And it looks different, it feels different, and the president seems to know it's different.
It is Friday, the 4th of October of 2019. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. The French 77s are poured and awaiting your imbibing pleasure. And oh, please do take care. If you ever have a French 77 that you make for yourself at home, make it with friends. First of all, never drink alone. But it is the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. But it is also a very potent one. Very potent. And really, I got to tell you, 2, maybe 2. More than that, I don't know how much you've been able to tolerate over the years. It doesn't matter. You'll feel it. Go for the taste. Go for the warmth. But believe me, don't topple over. And if you do start to topple, that's what your friends are there for. Indeed. Speaking of toppling over, Donald Trump really went off yesterday. Boy, he wants little Adam Schiff pretty much put on a pike at the border and thrown to the alligators and piranhas. After little Adam Schiff has been, shot in the legs to slow him down. That's the President of the United States. That's him. Yeah. Rather than doing the honorable, well, I wouldn't even say honorable. All right. He could just resign. Right. But no, he wants a civil war. Which just goes to prove that this guy, and I have to tell you, the people who find him as their leader, none of them ever had any care for America. America is in the way. America is big government, which is rather rich, no pun intended, with, a wannabe oligarch. See, that's the problem here in America. Our oligarchs are called businessmen. Which really makes a real businessman, I'd be insulted. Trump is a wannabe oligarch. He, a lot of people say, oh, he's got billions. Nah, that's questionable. That's why I say wannabe. But he rubs elbows with them. I know what that's like. you almost think you're part of the club. But everybody who is part of the club, just chuckles. Donald Trump wants to be part of the club. And in this club, you do take an oath. I don't know what kind of code there is anymore, but in this particular, organization of oligarchs, you take an oath. And that is one truism in these blood oaths, so to speak. You can get in, but there's only one way to get out. Only one. And that is what the President of the United States is up against. He has to destroy America. His life depends on it. And you think that I might be exaggerating, huh? I know. I think so too. Unfortunately, these supposed exaggerations tend to turn out to be a truism. That's why we like to avoid thinking about them. Donald Trump is now being confronted with a lifetime of avoidance about that core defect at the core of who he is as a person. And, I don't know, do we feel sorry for him? No. This guy knows enough about right and wrong. And he knows when he's doing something wrong because then he wants to cover it up. He wants to pay off the porn star. He wants to sue the contractor that did work for him. But, business is a blood sport at that level. You want to work for me? Are you ready to work for me? You looking at me? What's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Wow, I haven't even had one French 77 yet. On the rest of the menu, the Trump tax whistleblower accused at least one political appointee at the Treasury Department of attempting to interfere with the IRS's mandatory audit process. I wonder who that person could be. The North Carolina GOP played the sore loser after a court struck down his gerrymandering scheme. Yeah. Just like Trump, he's going to accuse other people of being corrupt. A corrupt mobster like Trump saying that he is now the anti-corruption king. I wonder where they got that, Ukraine, Russia. So the idea of the North Carolina GOP apparently accusing the Democratic Party of a corrupt gerrymander. Wow. And Italian Prime Minister Conte said he is not concerned that William Barr held secret meetings with the Italian intelligence agencies. Not concerned at all. After the break, we move to the chef's table where a Mexican Supreme Court justice resigned amid corruption allegations. Wow, it seems to be spreading. And Brazil police raided a Rio hospital to get the bullet one of their officers fired that killed an 8-year-old girl. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link right there by the social media scroll, deftly located by superior graphic design And Kelly Lincoln takes care of that, and we thank her very much for doing so. That being the chat room, of course. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It doesn't take much. About the cost of an espresso type coffee drink sent our way once a month goes a long way to helping us pay our bills and accumulate now the even more dire needed funds to replace the overworked workhorse machinery that has been working so hard, like horses, for half of the 8 years that Netroots Radio has been on, continuously 24/7, 365 as Resistance Radio, because the founders, that was their original intent all those decades ago, even before the signing of the Declaration. So, all kidding aside, thank you for your generosity, and it is in even more dire needs now. Oh, I should once again mention thank you to those who upped your recurring patronage, and welcome to the new folks who have now become recurring Patreons of Netroots Radio. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Also, he takes care of all the deft graphic design that we have out there in the world, especially our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Thank you, Tom. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime and put that out on social media. The show notes and links diary is an integral part to this whole operation here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because that's where the real news is, without, we'll say, my embellishments. Okay. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found mixed in with all the rest of us. And there's millions, maybe even billions now. Maybe. Well, I have been still a bit more in that grieving period since Wednesday, which would have been my son's 42nd birthday. And it's sad because I think of all the previous 41 years. The birthday celebration kind of goes a little bit before the birthday and a bit after, and I miss that. We couldn't necessarily always get together on his birthday, though gifts would be sent and all that, but we would meet up later, within, to that nearest weekend. So Mom and I, last night, went to dinner at a really nice place along the Rogue River, between Rogue River, our little village, and Grants Pass, called the River's Edge, because it's right there on the River's Edge, and had a fabulous meal. That kitchen really knows what they're doing. I sometimes deride the quality of chefing here in Southern Oregon, but that's only because I haven't been able to get to all the places. But yeah, I'm just kidding. It's not all diner food and middling muddled flavors with, no idea of technique. This kitchen really knows what they're doing, and if anybody's traveling through Southern Oregon and they happen to be, nearby Rogue River, Grants Pass, check out the River's Edge. They're great. But it was to honor, my mom's grandson and my son, and so it was grand. Now, because my son had a public life, he had a bit of a fan base with his music, and because I've been public with my life really since I sang with a Catholic boy choir with a Catholic boy choir organization in Oregon way back. It was like first grade, and there's many performers and public types in our family, extended down through time. So honoring my son on his birthday is something that I've done really since he was born. In some public way, I've written poems, I've written stories, photographs that I've shown at shows. My son has always been an integral part of who I am at the core of who I am as a person. And that's a good thing. I always considered that a good thing. So it was a bit disheartening when I looked at some of the, a Facebook community page here in Southern Oregon. And one of the normal trolls, that you get, they're people who tend to fall more towards the Trump side, shall we say, who find it fun to just kick the liberals. I mean, that's what this is all about. If they can destroy America and still kick a liberal, they're all in. So it was a bit disheartening when someone of that ilk decided that it would be fun to make a joke and belittle my grieving and just posting some songs that were, honoring my son's birthday and his death. And I thought, who does that? Who is so cruel? I mean, it's right there. There's no secret about what that is. You can't have a truce, a Christmas truce, and toast each other across no man's land for a moment. When someone is grieving the loss of their adult child, it's still okay to kick a liberal? Who thinks like that? All I hear is about how liberals are baby eaters. Democrats want to destroy everybody and eat your babies. Liberals are evil. Democrats are not Americans. That's what I hear. And then when I hear how violent we're supposed to be, and I keep looking up, and another synagogue's been burned down, and a bunch of liberals have been killed at some liberal place. And I'm not saying even it up and have a bunch. It's ballots, not bullets. But it's not the liberals who are doing this. I don't know anybody on our side who would be so heartless. So heartless. I don't care who the personage is. Even Dick Cheney. One of his daughters passed. Anybody, I don't care. I mean, maybe there are people like us on our side like that would insult Dick Cheney in his time of grief over his dead daughter, hypothetically. It wouldn't occur to me to do it. Let's just put it that way. But I guess that's why I have a big L on my forehead. Liberal loser. Kick them when they're down. So I consider that to be fairly heartless, and be honest, it pissed me off. It did. So, very few things rile me up anymore to wanting to get into a physical altercation, and I can't anymore. Not for an extended period of time. Let's put it that way. I know my limits. A man has to. But yeah, that just stirred me up. I have never wanted to get in someone's face as much as, well, at least for, forever. Don't do that. That's cruel. It is so cruel. Well, some people say that writers have, the last word. You can try. I also had a girlfriend to say, yeah, you think you have the last word? Well, that might be your last gasp. Well, that was in a completely different dynamic. In this situation, just putting a little emphasis upon the cruelty of this person, making a joke about someone's dead adult child, is probably off limits, and should be. And maybe the community at large might recognize that, and maybe they won't, but I made my statement. That's off limits. Yeah, I know. PC culture. Okay, maybe we should get on with the rest of the show here, because, boy, I went off there. Well, yeah. I hope no one ever experiences this. We all are in some, we're going to lose our parents. We're going to lose our siblings. But it's rough. And I thought I was prepared for everything. All you can do now is adapt. Josh Kovensky of Talking Points Memo brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An anonymous tipster who approached the House Ways and Means Committee with a complaint in July, accused a political appointee of interfering with the mandatory audit of the president or vice president's returns. The whistleblower is reportedly a male, a career employee of the IRS. Oh, no, he's the deep state. Yeah, the deep state, the United States of America. His complaint focuses on allegations that at least one political appointee, I wonder if it's somebody that has like two consonants in the first two letters of the name. I wonder if it's that person. I wonder. At least one political appointee at the Treasury Department attempted to interfere with the IRS's mandatory audit process in which it audits the tax returns of the president and the vice president each year. Except for this time. This time is different. The tipster is reportedly speaking to the Washington Post and declined to tell the newspaper about the details of the complaint. I steadfastly refuse to discuss the substance or details of the complaint, but I have some legitimate concerns about reckless statements being made about whistleblowers, he told the newspaper. House Ways and Means Chair Representative Richard Neal of Massachusetts received the complaint on July 29th and told a federal judge about it in August as part of a lawsuit that seeks to force the Trump administration to comply with the committee's demand for the president's tax returns. Now, I'll just put it simply here. What the judge said is that the Trump administration has to follow the rule of law. Israel from Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. 1 month ago, in early September, a panel of judges struck down the North Carolina Republicans' gerrymander of the state's legislative maps, finding the GOP's, quote, carefully crafted maps and not the will of the voters, end quote, dictated election outcomes and majority control of the General Assembly. Those maps, enacted in 2017, had replaced a 2011 GOP gerrymander that had also been ruled unconstitutional, but for different reasons. On Wednesday, the North Carolina Republicans attempted to pretend it was the North Carolina Democratic minority in the legislature that was somehow nefarious, accusing them of a gerrymander scheme. The gerrymandered maps were drawn by Republican lawmakers to ensure that even if most North Carolina voters wanted to elect a Democratic majority in the legislature, they would be unable to do so by packing as many Democratic voters as possible into a small number of districts. They created enough solidly Republican districts that their control was effectively guaranteed. The maps violated the state's constitution, which guarantees free elections, equal protection, and freedom of speech and assembly. Now, as legislators consider how to create new maps for the 2020 elections, the state GOP baselessly accused the Democratic minority of doing exactly what it was just slapped down for by the courts, something that it had once claimed was just fine. In announcing a public records request into House Democrats' redistricting scheme, party spokesperson Jeff Hauser made a litany of seemingly contradictory allegations accusing Democrats of being less than transparent, while they openly worked on the maps. House Republicans were committed to an open and transparent process to comply with a court order, Hauser wrote. On the other hand, House Democrats openly consulted with outside counsel and experts, used map software, and kept partisan staffers like Daniel Jacobson available on demand to approve any changes to ensure maximum advantage. Jacobson, a redistricting reform advocate, represented Common Cause North Carolina in the successful court challenge to the 2017 GOP gerrymander, the winner of the court case. Hauser did not immediately respond to a request for evidence for these claims because they never have any. Just throw it out there. The base laps it up. Democrats are not real Americans, so let's join Vlad. Hauser also noted that the Republican Party's demand for Democratic lawmakers' records is especially ironic given GOP lawmakers' own attempts to circumvent disclosure laws, including in the redistricting trial. Yep. The Republican majority has used legislative privilege to essentially shut down any public record request to the legislature for 10 years, so this request is laughable, he said. After the court ruling, State Senate GOP leader Phil Berger claimed the decision contradicts the Constitution and binding legal precedent, but vowed to respect the court's decision and finally put this divisive battle behind us. Nearly a decade of relentless litigation has strained the legitimacy of the state's institutions and the relationship between its leaders to the breaking point. It's time to move on. Apparently, the state party did not get the message. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters, and why wouldn't they be anonymous? They're reporting on, Trump intelligence and conspiracy theories, and you don't want to be caught up in that backwash, not at all. But anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte is not concerned about reports that U.S. Attorney General William Barr held meetings with Italian intelligence agencies. An Italian newspaper Corriere del Sera reported on Wednesday that Barr met with intelligence services as part of an investigation into Trump's administration into the origins of the probe of Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. election. Prime Minister Conte sees no anomalous behavior on the part of our secret services. A statement from Conte's office said, adding that he would address a parliamentary committee for security about the reported meetings. Without citing its sources, Corriere said Conte had authorized the two meetings in Rome with Gennaro Vecchione, head of the DIS intelligence service, as well as other officials in August of last week. A source close to the matter told Reuters yesterday, Thursday, that Barr met with Italian intelligence officials in Rome on September 27th. Vecchione said in a statement he would make no comment to the press and would only discuss the matter in appropriate forums. You know, like the drawing room at the Vatican. They have a lot of nice Italian liqueurs there, you know. U.S. intelligence agencies and Special Counsel Robert Mueller concluded that Russia interfered in the 2016 election with a scheme of hacking and propaganda to boost Trump's Republican candidacy and disparage his Democratic opponent Hillary Clinton. Mueller detailed a series of contacts between Trump's campaign and Russia. Trump, who is running for re-election next year, has called the Russia investigation a witch hunt and a hoax, and has repeatedly sought to discredit it. And of course, Russia has denied interfering in the election, but said they're going to do it again. Wink, wink. Don't worry, we can do it. And now, the President of the United States is really inviting all sorts of other countries to help out, too, to get him reelected. Barr, a Trump appointee, who is the top U.S. law enforcement official, is personally involved in investigating Trump's complaints that he and his 2016 campaign were improperly targeted by U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies. And in this reporter's opinion, Barr has become so because he's been watching a lot of Fox. But let's be clear. This guy has trucked in conspiracy and right-wing fever swamp behavior since before Iran-Contra. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, in space, no one can hear you cry. In a recent interview, director James Gray stated he wasn't Kubrick, but the influence of Kubrick in his 1968 classic 2001: A Space Odyssey is undeniable in Gray's latest Ad Astra. In the latter, set in the near future, as we're told at the beginning, space travel has been commercialized. We see the same logos in a spaceport that greet one today in airports, as astronaut Roy McBride, played by Brad Pitt in a career high performance, embarks on a journey to find his long-lost father, Tommy Lee Jones. Nearly 30 years prior, the elder McBride had embarked on a seemingly ill-fated journey to near Neptune, where a search for intelligent life could be conducted more efficiently. He and his crew had apparently disappeared. In the riveting start to the film, a surge destroys a ground-based space antenna that Roy is working on, and we soon find out that that surge, one of a number that had occurred of late and which could threaten all life within light years, is suspected of being related to the power source used by the elder McBride's mission. It's not a spoiler to say that the two are connected, but the film really isn't about that connection, but rather about human connection. And Roy is by all appearances cut off from that. Thanks to his father's abandonment, he is cold and aloof, technically proficient, but barely functional, as witnessed by his estrangement from his wife Eve, played by an underused Liv Tyler. As Roy's journey continues, comparisons to another movie classic, Apocalypse Now, are also inescapable. The ending of Ad Astra is unsatisfying in the conventional sense, but it will leave you with food for thought and the memories of a fascinating journey. Actually, two journeys. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. A marine heat wave in 2016 killed off a full third of Australia's Great Barrier Reef, the largest coral reef system in the world.
It's terrible watching your favorite ecosystems slowly die.
Carly Kenkel is a marine biologist at the University of Southern California who's studied that coral bleaching event. Bleaching occurs when the waters around corals become too cold, or too salty, or too hot, but mostly too hot. And then the symbiotic algae that live inside corals, which are photosynthetic food factories, abandon the coral, which causes them to die.
Because they're losing their nutritional source, so they're essentially starving to death.
But coral can house multiple species of algae, some more heat tolerant than others. So sometimes, in the face of stress, the hardier algae proliferate, and that change offsets the damage caused by the exodus of the more sensitive species. That process is called shuffling. Kenkel and her colleagues studied shuffling in corals affected by the 2016 bleaching event on the Great Barrier Reef, and they found that adult corals can actually pass those reshuffled algal residents along to their offspring in their eggs, pointing to a possible way successive generations of coral could adapt to warmer waters.
If your mom can kind of prime you for the environment that you might be experiencing, that presumably would improve your fitness.
The details are in the journal Scientific Reports. So can this help corals beat back bleaching?
The pace of climate change and the frequency and intensity of these stress events is such that I don't think this is enough.
In the face of so many threats, even this trick may fail to provide relief for the reef. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Earlier this year, President Trump circumvented the congressional appropriation process by declaring a national emergency. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And then, based on his alleged national emergency, funneling military money to DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to build his border wall. Both the House and the Senate voted to terminate Trump's national emergency, but Trump then vetoed the House and Senate action as expected. This back and forth with the legislative branch demonstrates the president's blatant disregard for the will of the people, who largely rejected his anti-immigrant agenda in the midterm elections, as well as his intransigent disregard for Congress's power as a co-equal branch of government. But there is a way to fight back. Right now, Congress is deciding the Department of Homeland Security budget for the next fiscal year. And it is, I suggest, important for us to raise our voices while we have a chance. We can contact our senators and representatives right now and demand that they cut DHS's budget and prevent the president from transferring money from other agencies to the Department of Homeland Security. If we want to pursue the inclusive, humane values that we as a country profess and for which we have stood many times in the past, then we must hold Trump's DHS accountable. And that means cutting its budget. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day that President Harry S. Truman issued Executive Order 9639. It ordered the U.S. Navy to seize control of more than 40 oil refineries across the country. As World War II was drawing to a close, workers in many industries were growing increasingly restless. They had seen company owners rake in record profits, and the workers felt they had not received their fair share. This included oil refinery workers. In August, the workers rejected a proposed settlement of their grievances over wages and hours. On September 17th, the CIO Oil Workers Union called for a strike of its 35,000 members. Although the war was ending, Truman knew oil was needed to demobilize and redeploy the troops. He used that as a basis to thwart the workers and the strike. His executive order declared that the war effort will be unduly impeded or delayed by such interruptions. He went on to state, the Secretary of the Navy is hereby authorized and directed to take possession of the plants and facilities used in the transportation, refining, and processing of petroleum and petroleum products. Telegrams were sent to the refineries declaring that they were now under the control of the U.S. government. A third of the oil refineries in the nation came under this order. This included refineries owned by the giants of the industry, including Gulf, Shell, and Standard Oil. This was not the last time Truman attempted this tactic. He tried similar methods to intervene in labor disputes on the railroads and in the steel mills. Truman was certainly not alone. For more than a century, U.S. presidents have intervened to end strikes. From Grover Cleveland's calling out the Army to end the Pullman strike in 1884 to Reagan locking out the Patco workers in 1981. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
House investigators Thursday night released a tranche of text messages that show senior State Department officials coordinating with the Ukrainian president's top aide and Donald Trump's personal lawyer to leverage a potential summit between the heads of state. The texts clearly show quid pro quo, that the meeting would have depended on whether the Ukrainian President Zelensky promised to investigate the 2016 U.S. presidential election and an energy company that employed the son of 2020 Democratic candidate Joe Biden. Former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, appeared on MSNBC shortly after the texts were made public Thursday night and explained how truly damning they are for the president.
We have a lot of information now that was just released about texts between Ambassador Volker, between our EU ambassador. Goodness knows why he is involved in any of this, by the way. And it is not just this phone call. We now know that they were prepping the phone call, and the quid pro quo is clear as day in these texts. The quid pro quo is not only do you need to open an investigation, Mr. Zelensky, but you need to put it on the record that you are going to do this investigation. Oh, and you need to also put it on the record that you are going to expose what Ukraine did in interfering in the 2016 elections. Extraordinary stuff that just dropped a few minutes ago, but it shows that it's a much bigger story. It wasn't just an off-the-cuff remark that the president, as he sometimes does, as you and I know. This was all calculated, and then the next day we have a delegation there. Mr. Volker himself is in Ukraine to try to follow up on what the president said in that call.
The texts were provided to investigators by former special U.S. envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, during a nearly 10-hour deposition on Thursday. The New York Times is reporting that Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, and Kurt Volker helped draft a statement for President Zelensky in August that would have committed Ukraine's new leader to pursuing investigations sought by Trump into his political rivals. But somehow in the midst of all these revelations, Ukraine's current prosecutor on Friday said his office is going to review up to 15 cases that involve Burisma, the company that Joe Biden's son Hunter worked for. Now, Thursday provided a true moment of surrealism when, during the latest edition of Trump's Chopper Talk, the president finally answered the question posed to him repeatedly at Wednesday's press conference. What exactly did you want Zelensky to do regarding the Bidens? And, well, Trump did it again.
Well, I would think that if they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens. It's a very simple answer. They should investigate the Bidens, because how does a company that's newly formed, and all these companies, if you look at, and by the way, likewise, China should start an investigation into the Bidens, because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine.
Yeah, you heard that. Donald Trump on Thursday urged another foreign government to probe former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter, saying the Chinese government should look into Hunter Biden's involvement with an investment fund that raised money in the country. Now, keep in mind, Donald Trump has pushed the United States into a tense trade war with China. And those remarks, calling on China to investigate the Bidens, came just 30 seconds after he made these remarks regarding negotiations with Beijing on a possible trade agreement.
I have a lot of options on China, but if they don't do what we want, we have tremendous power.
Chinese officials will be in Washington next week in another attempt to revive talks. To further complicate matters, CNN is reporting that during a June 18th phone call with Xi, Trump not only raised Biden's political prospects, but those of Senator Elizabeth Warren as well, who by then had started rising in the polls. In that call, Trump also told Xi he'd remain quiet on Hong Kong protests as long as trade talks progressed. And the White House stored the record of that call in the highly secured electronic system where they stashed the now infamous July 25th call between Trump and Zelensky. Oh, what a tangled web they weave. Which brings us to Friday, a day sure to produce more bombshells as the intelligence community's Inspector General, Michael Atkinson, appears before the House Intelligence Committee in a closed hearing. Friday is also the day that the State Department is required to officially respond to a subpoena from the key House committees for documents. Oh, and by the way, there's another whistleblower complaint of concern circulating on Capitol Hill. This one filed by an IRS official who reports that he was told that at least one Treasury Department political appointee attempted to improperly interfere with the annual audit of the president's or vice president's tax returns. Stay tuned. I got good news. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, which means I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. It looks like we're going to be similar conditions as we were yesterday, topping out at about mid-60s, and overnight lows will be in the mid to upper 40s. Mostly cloudy conditions. We did have a spot of precipitation yesterday a few times, and it looks like we may have the same, though the chance of precipitation is rated low to none. It will pick up later on tonight, and maybe that's what they mean. But I got to tell you, what I've seen out there looks a little heavier than what can stay in the sky. Should be sunny tomorrow with a high of 70, mainly sunny skies, and winds are light and variable from now through then, and doesn't really look like we're going to have much in the way of really measurable rain through all of next week. And, and once again, I should mention that the temperatures look like they shall be temperate, upper 60s, low 70s for the next week. Things will change as they usually do. Ragweed pollen is rated high. Air quality index has gone up a couple of notches to 30 parts per million, though that's still in the good range. And the daytime UV index is in the moderate range at 4. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.23 inches. Visibility is down to 6 miles. And relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 62 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 75 and sunny. Kiev is 53 and fair. Kabul is 58 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 83 and fair. Tokyo is 73 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 65 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 and sunny. And New York, New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees and Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A Mexican Supreme Court justice has resigned after the judge faced questions about a possible probe of Mexico's financial intelligence unit. Justice Eduardo Medina Mora, age 62, was appointed under prior President Enrique Peña Nieto in 2015, and according to local media was set to serve until 2030. Under the last administration, he was also ambassador to the U.S., and under prior President Felipe Calderón was Attorney General. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador accepted Medina Mora's request to leave his post and would send it to the Senate for final approval, his office said, but did not provide further details. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador accepted Medina Mora's request to leave his post and will send it to the Senate for final approval, his office said, but did not provide further details. Medina Mora could not be reached for comment. I wonder why. López Obrador told reporters in June that the Financial Intelligence Unit, which probes money laundering and other financial crimes, had received information on Medina Mora from U.S. authorities. He declined to state whether an investigation is underway. Medina Mora's exit, which leaves 10 other justices in the court, was unusual. Following López Obrador's June comments, the financial intelligence chief said his office had been asked by the Senate to analyze the financial transfers pertaining to a justice without naming the person, and the Financial Intelligence Unit also declined to comment.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Even more anonymous worker bees and Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Between 10 and 20 Brazilian police officers swept into a hospital in Rio de Janeiro and demanded doctors hand over a bullet that killed an 8-year-old girl during a police operation. The military police officers raided the Getúlio Vargas Hospital around dawn on September 21st, a Saturday, just hours after Agatha Felix was killed in the city's poor Alameo district. According to bystanders, Felix was shot by a police raid when a police officer mistakenly shot her while aiming at a motorcyclist. She died later in hospital. Veja reported that doctors refused to give the officers the bullet and now fear reprisals. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the weekend, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. In fact, we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Monday, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.